we have two methods of exporting the runtime data table to a specified location. First is export and the second is export sheet. So we'll see one by one. For export, we have to simply write datatable.export, and in the bracket you have give the path. You have to give the path where you want to save the script. So suppose I want to save it over here. So this is the path which I have to give. So I'll just copy paste the path over here, and then you have to give the file name. So here I'll give the file name as well. So a new file I want to save, we already have result file, so I will give the name as result underscore export. So it will be saved with this name. So what this code will do is after the script comes out of this loop and all the values are populated in your runtime, the result value is populated in your runtime data table, then the last line of the code will execute, that is datatable.export. So the whatever is in the runtime data table, as you had seen, this is your runtime data table. So all of this will be exported to a particular location. And there's one more method which I told you, that is datatable.importsheet. So what is the difference between these two methods? Export just directly exports the entire workbook, that is entire data table, that is your global tab as well as your action tab. So everything is exported into a new workbook which is created in the particular location. Whereas in datatable.export sheet, it only exports this sheet, the result sheet, which is the global tab. So only this sheet will be exported, and the local tab, that is action 1, won't be exported. So if you want to export a particular sheet, if you want to export the result from a particular sheet, then you can use export sheet, because what happens is sometimes the workbook could be a huge file, so you don't want to export the entire workbook but only a sheet of it. So you can use datatable.export sheet. And as you can see, inside the bracket we have to give the file name same way as we gave it to export, and comma the source sheet name, so VT source sheet. So how it will be in double quotes, we have to give the file name. So I'll copy the path, and yeah, for export sheet you don't need the brackets, so you can just give a space and give the destination location, comma the source sheet. That is we are exporting global sheet, right? So I can give 1. This is the indexing, that is my first sheet. If you want to export action 1, that is the local sheet, you can give 2. So comma 1 says that it will export the global sheet to this destination. So results underscore export file will be created in that particular destination, comma the first sheet, that is global, will also be created inside that file, and the data whatever is present in the global sheet will be exported to that file in that particular sheet. So this is the difference between export and export sheet. Now there are a few points which you have to note about the export sheet method which could be useful for you. First is, if the specified file does not exist, a new file is created and the specified sheet is saved. Okay, so suppose a results export file is not existing. In our case it is not existing, so this new file is created and global sheet is created in that file, in that workbook. A new global sheet is created and the runtime data table values are pasted over there. But what if the second thing is, if the current file exists but the file does not contain a sheet with the specified sheet name, the sheet is inserted as the last sheet of the file. Okay, suppose results. So what I'm talking is only about export sheet. Okay, these points are relevant only for export sheet. So suppose my second point was, suppose results underscore export workbook already exists, which are having suppose sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, but it is not having global sheet. So what QTP will do is, it will just paste this runtime data table result it will paste this entire thing. It will create a new sheet global at the end of the sheet, at the end of as the last sheet of the workbook, and it will paste all these values. So suppose my Excel, I'll open a new Excel. Now suppose my Excel, this Excel has by default three sheets, right? Sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. So a new sheet global will be created over here, and the values will be automatically pasted over here on this sheet. So since this workbook is already since if book 1 is already existing, that is a result underscore export is already existing in our case, then this will happen. The third point is, if the current file exists and the file also contains the specified sheet, that is global, the sheet with the name global, then the exported sheet overrides the existing sheet. Now say for example, this workbook has name results underscore export, and it is saved in the location which I used for saving the runtime data table, and it also has a sheet with the name global. So when QTP is exporting this runtime data table, it will look at the results underscore export workbook which is already existing over there. So it will go to that workbook and it will export the first sheet, that is the global sheet, and it will also find that the global sheet is also existing. So what it will do is it will just override the values, whatever is there on the sheet, it will override with the runtime data table values which we got. Okay, so earlier whatever is there will be will be overwritten. So these are the 3 points which you have to take care with the export sheet. Export is simply easy because you have to just export the entire workbook on its own, so a new workbook is created. But in case of export sheet, since you are exporting only a particular sheet, so you have to be careful about it. So what we can do is we can just run and see if this method works. So I'll export the sheet to a particular location, result underscore export. Since this workbook is not existing, it will be created, and a global sheet will be created where the results will be saved. So I'll just run it. I've ran it for all 7 values. This is my run has stopped and the result summary has been displayed. So when I go to that path where I had saved the results underscore export, so as you can see, results underscore export, a new file has been created. Now this file is not showing the Excel format because the extension is not been added. What happens is sometimes depends on your local settings. Sometimes you are displaying the extension, sometimes you're not displaying. So in my case, the extensions are that is .xls is displayed. So while executing, while scripting, I also need to give result underscore export .xls as the name, so that the file could be saved as .xls file. So right now I'm just doing it manually .xls, and let's open this file. So when I open this, I'll see the result in the format which I wanted, in exactly it is exactly the same as the runtime data table. So we could run the script. The script could be run automatically. I mean, it could fetch the result automatically without manual intervention of exporting the sheet. Now like we had export and export sheet. For exporting the sheet, we have the same for importing the sheet. So we have datatable.import, which works pretty much the same as datatable.export. We just have to give the file name inside, that is the exact path of the import file. Now before starting with the import, I'll like to give you a brief understanding about what importing file does. Now as you can see that I had manually created this data table by double clicking on the column, different columns, and giving the column names like agent name, password, and result. And I also gave the inputs, 7 inputs manually on the data table. So all this work was done manually. But what if we are getting a file which we want to import in our script? Sometimes what happens is you get input from some other user. I have created a script, but I'll get input from somebody else, and I want to take the input, that input in the format which it is, as it is, and then I have to run the script. So what I can do is QTP can import that Excel sheet into this data table. So like we exported the result from the data table to our local XLS sheet, we can also import the data from the XLS sheet, local XLS sheet, to our data table. So this could be achieved using import and import sheet, like we used export and export sheet for exporting the files.